I'd like to offer a few reflections on spiritual practice in a time of contagion. We are all living in uncertain times, unusual times, times when our presuppositions about our life have been upturned, and we are facing even the possibility of our death. How can we live through these times with dignity and with a grace that befits us as human beings? The question I would like to address is, what can spiritual practice offer to make a difference in living through all of this? And by spiritual practice, I would like to narrow that down to the practice of finding a posture conducive to stillness, breathing with awareness, and allowing the mind to come to settle in the here and now, to find its peace, to find its base, to find its home. That's a spiritual practice called contemplative practice, or the practice of meditation, which can be found in different traditions: Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and so on. So whatever religious tradition or background you may come from, or whether you do not come from a religious background, this is a spiritual practice that you can access and enable to enrich your own life. Now, from this spiritual practice, we can look at three words that characterize our present situation. These three words are uncertainty, isolation, and pain and suffering. Certainly, we can identify with each of these three words. And I would like to offer these words precisely as turning words from a Zen tradition. Turning word is a phrase used from the Zen context that I was raised in, which refers to a word that, first taken at first value, can be taken in one way, but when you look deeply into it, it can be a good occasion to turn around our worldview, to turn around our ways of seeing, to turn around and transform our way of seeing. So let's take these words. Uncertainty. We can all identify with that. When will this end? Will I ever get my normal life back? Will I find my job again? Or will I have enough financial resources to be able to muster through this? Or will I contract the virus and get sick? Or for those of us who may already be feeling the symptoms, will I survive through this? All of these uncertainties are besieging us from all sides. So we are certainly in that state that is characterized by uncertainty. So how do we address this? The spiritual practice that I am pointing to, which is now being practiced by so many people across the globe in so many different ways, from so many different backgrounds, entails just finding a posture conducive to stillness, breathing in and breathing out, and allowing the mind to be still. If we can engage in this practice even for a few minutes a day for starters, we may be able to find an oasis of inner peace and equanimity and tranquility that will enable us to see through the uncertain time that can bring forth anxiety or fear in us, which might even lead to panic. Fear comes from a mind that is imagining something in a future that we dread or we don't want to happen, and so there comes about anxiety, which, as I said, can lead to panic, which can lead us to actions that are unreasonable and can be destructive. So in sitting here and breathing in and breathing out and allowing the mind to just be still right here, we are able to see through that mind and are able to bring it back to right here, right now, before it wreaks any havoc. And as we do so, what happens? I breathe in, I breathe out, I feel my body sitting here, I feel the sensations in my legs, in my knees, in my thighs, in my hips, in my back, my shoulders, my head, trying to make it straight, keeping my eyes slightly open. And as I am aware of all of that, just allowing myself to be fully present in this, as I open my eyes, what do I see? I see a chair before me, a table, bookshelves, and there's a window. As I look out the window, there's a blue jay perching on a branch, and that blue jay is just moving about. How wondrous. And then I look around, I see other trees. I see the sky, the clouds. Just this, the blue jay, which has now flown away somewhere, the trees, the chair, the desk, my body, right here, just this. This sense of just this is what comes to me, living the fullness of each present moment with peace and with acceptance and a quiet joy. Not worried about the future, because the future will unfold in its own way as I continue living each moment in just this. Isolation. We are all enjoined to keep social distancing, and that has involved many things for many different people, but for many of us it's something that calls us to stay home and stay within a limited nexus of space, but through the internet we are still able to connect with the world. But not just through the internet, but even without the internet, as we sit in a place of stillness, breathe in and breathe out, and come home to that place where we are just right here, right now, that can be a place that can open up and make us realize our connectedness with each and everyone, each and everything in this whole universe. As I breathe, I realize that I'm not the only one breathing. I breathe with all the breathing beings in the world around, with human beings, with animals, and especially with the trees who give me back the oxygen that I am able to take for my own nourishment, and I give them back whatever comes from my breath that they take for their nourishment in an exchange of life. I am able to see through that interconnectedness with all beings with more clear eyes. And that's what this word isolation can be able to turn into, from isolation to a sense of solidarity and interconnectedness through this spiritual practice. Pain and suffering. It is precisely in seeing that I am connected to all other beings in this world that allows me to really feel in with the pain and suffering of so many who are now being affected by this contagion. And I am able to feel and experience their suffering as my own. And this openness in my heart allows me to let everyone enter my heart and moves me and empowers me to a life of compassion. Compassion means to suffer with. So to live a life of compassion is to simply live in my own simple way, but somehow touched and moved and empowered by the pain and suffering of others, to enable me to give myself back as a gift that may in some way help in alleviating that pain and suffering. So that is the direction that my life then is given through this spiritual practice in the midst of this misery and pain and suffering, uncertainty and isolation that I see around me. So to conclude, it's an invitation for all of us to just take a short few minutes a day for starters, and then perhaps extend it to a longer period, and perhaps extend it several times a day, and allow us to enter into that place of peace and inner tranquility, which will open up to us that realization of our interconnectedness with everyone, which will then unleash the powers of compassion in each of us and enable us to live accordingly. May we all find that source of peace, of that tranquility, and the source of that compassion that can transform our lives as we live through, and who knows, maybe die through this whole situation. But even if we do, we know that our lives will have been infinitely meaningful as a gift that we are able to offer to the whole universe.